Hi, my name's Craig Kelly, and I'm actually here today to do a review on diaphragms. This isn't a how-to, but this is a review of the products themselves. We're really going to look at three points of criteria. One of being the fit right out of the package for a pallet. Pallets are different across the board. There's wide, deep, shallow, narrow, things like that. And as we move forward, I'll explain for me what my pallet is like to give you an idea of how these will fit. And we'll go through detail. The second point that we're going to cover is the quality of tone that each one of these produce. Now, with that being said, we're going to look at the single diaphragms, the doubles, and the triples. This is going to be a three-part series, and today we're going to do part one, which is all the single diaphragms. We've elected to go with a third one criteria as well, which is how easy it is to use. And that's going to be subject to different people, obviously, from beginner to advanced. But I'm going to break it down in more simple terms of really how difficult is it to use as far as air pressure, tongue pressure, things like that. As you see, we have several different manufacturers here, and we've elected to stick with 5 different manufacturers. The first being Bugling Bull Game Calls. We've had some requests for the Raging Bull single reed and the double reed, the closer. I did not have a triple reed from Bugling Bull Game Call, so we're going to do the single and the double there. Then we move on to Glacier Country Hunting Calls. We're going with a single reed Sweet Temptation Plus, a double reed of the Blue Blaster, and the triple reed of obviously the yellow Triple Threat. Now the third manufacturer is Berry Game Calls. There's also 3 as well, the single here, the double here, and the triple here. And we'll go through each one in detail as well. Part 1, again, we're going to stay with the singles. Fourth manufacturer is Phelps Game Calls. We're going to go with the Signature Bull single, the Herdmaster double, and then this is also a triple threat from Phelps, and the triple reed. And then the last manufacturer is Point Blank Calls. This is a knockdown series through all 3 of them. The first one's going to be the single reed, the orange is the double, and the yellow is the triple. And again, we're going to start looking at a couple different things, the three criteria. What you're really going to notice in the difference, and I'll explain each one, is you have narrow frames, you have wide frames, you have the aluminum that's pushed up, and you have a tab that is down. And I'll explain what the tab down means. There's 2 manufacturers specifically that you really want to make sure that the tab is down, and I'll explain that why as well. So we're going to go ahead and start with the single reeds coming right next. Okay, so today, for the purpose of trying to get a fair review across the board with the 3 criteria that we spoke about, I'm going to use just the Bugling Bull Game Calls Bully Bull tube. That's typically all I use as it is in the field and etc. So we're going to start off with the Raging Bull single diaphragm. And again, I'm going to try to mimic the same air pressure, tongue pressure, and the same length of call with the bugle, and then we're going to put some grunts into it, just a few, to see how that call holds. So again, I'm going to start off with the Raging Bull, and we'll go from there. Okay, well, the Raging Bull actually has a very clear sound. It takes lighter tongue pressure. You do have, you know, some air, and you can adjust the tones you're trying to get with your air volume. In other words, how much air you exhale. The frame, I have a narrow palate that's in between my teeth. This call also has part of its frame that is actually, set this down here, that is actually stamped up that hits the roof of your mouth. And with that, it creates an air gap in there. A little bit toward like the All-Star call, if you guys are familiar with those as well. It has a dome which allows it to fit up against your palate. So for me, I have a narrow palate. It's not really deep, and this call actually fits me fairly well. With the elk tones, I'll go to that second category. I feel that it does have a very quality tone. It's probably, you know, in my estimation, one of the best toned single reed calls as well. So the fit right out of the package, don't have to do anything to it. It fits up in there. With the grunts, it tends to want to fall out. You're taking your tongue and you're popping that air pressure. So it does tend to fall down a little bit on me. A little bit to get away from that is, on this call, is you can actually take your thumb and your two forefingers, and thumbs being on the bottom, and you can bend it just a little bit if you need to, if you have that narrow palate, and so it fits up in between your teeth a little better. But so far, we have the fit right out of the package is fairly good, especially for a narrow palate. The quality of tone is fairly good. I wouldn't hesitate to utilize this call. And the ease of use, I didn't have to add a lot of tongue pressure. It had a very clear sounding bugle. So far, the Raging Bull has produced. Okay, so looking at the Glacier Country Hunting Call and the Sweet Temptation, which is a single reed as well. It is more of a wider frame call. In other words, the width across the frame itself is wider than the Bugling Bull. It also has a dimple in the frame. It's smooth up top and has a dimple on the bottom right in the center. That dimple, along with another manufacturer as we go down the line, needs to be down. When I say down, it will be against or down toward your tongue. That will help produce some of the best sounds, I believe. So again, Glacier Hunting Calls, and this is the Sweet Temptation, and we'll go from Okay, again, that's the Sweet Temptation from Glacier Hunting Calls. I'm sorry. This one takes a little bit more air pressure. It takes the same tongue pressure as a Bugling Bull game call. It has a fairly good tone for a single reed. I feel that you can actually push it up a little harder to hold it in place with your tongue. For me, because it doesn't have that aluminum plate that's pushed up that goes against the roof of your mouth. So it doesn't really go up in Glenn Berry and Berry game calls. And we're going to go on to his single reed, and it's a blue reed, and it's called the Single Blue Small Bull. That's on his package there. This one, what I've noticed right out of the package as well, is the frame is actually a little narrower. That being said, typically narrower frames will require more air and tongue pressure to get the sounds desired. But again, my goal is to blow them all the same and see what we do. If don't get a sound out of any of these, we'll adjust and explain what we had to adjust to get those sounds. So, Berry game calls, and this is the Small Bull single reed. Okay, that was the same air and tongue pressure as the previous two. This call, I'm going to have to put more air and more tongue, and we'll give it another go and see where that puts us at this point. Okay, so the criteria on this one, the fit right out of the package, it fits fine. There's not a problem with the fit. There is no tab to worry about, so you can really, as single read, go either direction with it. The quality of tone for the single read compared to the previous two at this point is lacking, just because I can't get the quality and the volume of the bugle or the grunts through this read at this point. Ease of use, it kind of goes with the quality of tone. It's more of a difficult read to actually use, to blow, and to be consistent with so far in this review. So now it's on to the next one. We're going to look at Phelps game calls. So now that we're at the Phelps game calls, we're looking at what they call a signature bull, single read. It's again a wide frame. It also has a tab on the frame itself, so that tab should be down as well. As far as anything else at this point, single read, it's pretty self-explanatory. Make sure the tab is down. So we're going to go ahead and give this one a try. So, looking at the three criterias on the Phelps signature bull call, the fit is fine, even though it has a wider palate, wider frame. I'm sorry, for my palate, but it's similar to the Glacier Country call at this point as far as the frame and the size of the call. The quality of tone is fairly good. And how easy is it to use? At this point, blowing it, it's fairly easy to use. I'm using, lighter tongue pressure, hold it in place, and I'm using the air to get the tone out. And it seemed to want to break over and do the things that a reed typically does to create that elk sound fairly well. So judging on three criterias, I think we covered that, and we're going to be moving on here. Okay, so now we're moving on to the point blank, which is our last manufacturer on this table for the single reeds. And this again is the knockdown series, all three of the calls. And they're just calling it a single reed. So at this point, I'm looking at the design of it. Again, it has also a little tab on it, which I'm putting down on this call. It also is the wider frame as well. So we'll go ahead and give this bugle a try. So the fit right out of the package is very similar to the Glacier Country and the Phelps game calls, as far as when I look at the size of the call itself, the frame, and basically what they call the tape around it, it's almost virtually identical to the Glacier Country and to the Phelps. The fit right out of the package, it's fairly good for me in a narrow palate. The quality of tone, it's there as far as being an elk sound. It's a little more higher pitch than the Glacier Country or the Phelps, and also the Raging Bull. So as far as quality of tone, it will call elk in. It's fairly easy to use, so that's our third criteria, is how easy is it to use. Again, I put it right there with, as far as ease of use with the Bugling Bull, the Glacier Country, the Phelps, and the Point Blank. When we get back here and we start looking at the grading factor, we'll go through in detail where I put it as far as 1 to 5 stars. 1 being on the very low end and 5 obviously being the top end, and we'll cover that here. So now that we're actually going through all the single reads, I want to go and introduce again the calls, and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to rate those calls based on our 3 criteria that we have. I wanted to keep it very basic because of all the questions that I get. I see other people being asked on forums and on other places. Basically, people just want some basic information. Again, this isn't a how-to, it's just 3 criteria of what read should I get. We get those questions all the time. So we're going to go to Bugling Bull game calls. And again, this is the Raging Bull call. The fit right of the package is actually fairly good. It has the narrower frame we talked about. The one thing for me, again, is this aluminum piece that allows that air gap, which helps create some of the sounds, how clean the sound is and things like that. That actually helps, but for me, I don't really like feeling that hit the roof of my mouth. It actually gets uncomfortable after a period of time for me. So with the fit right out of the package, I would say I would give it at 3.5 stars, just because of the aluminum at this point. So, all right, so now when we're talking about the quality of tone with the Raging Bull, the quality of tone is very, very good. It's very clear, crisp. It's a single read, so you're not going to be getting the big, heavy, big herd bull kind of mustered up sounds out of this, but you can use it for really anything as far as any bugles go. Where it's a little shorter or tighter is also on the grunts. It's a very good read. So as far as quality of tone, I'd give this read about a 4.5. Moving on to how easy is it to use, it's one of the easier ones to use as well in the group of calls that we have and we're looking at today. So ease of use, I would give it at 4 stars. Okay, so moving on to the second manufacturer, Glacier Country Hunting Calls, and the Sweet Temptation. Again, it's a wider frame. Tab has to be down towards your tongue when you blow. As far as the fit right out of the package, for me, these larger frames, they tend to want to drop off a little more off the top of my palate. So a trick I guess I would do is I would take, again, if we can take a look at that, as I take my thumb on the very bottom or on either side of that tab, my 4 fingers on the very end, and I bend it just a little bit. And what that does, it creates a curvature where it would fit in your palate a little better. So you can still use the wide frame, have a little curvature, and it will actually stay up in there a little better. So the fit right out of the package for the wider frame, for me, would be about a 3.5. Once I bend it, I put the fit right about a 4.5. So if that gives you an idea for smaller palates. The quality of tone on this single reed Sweet Temptation that he has, I would give that about 3.75, right in there to close to a 4. It is a single reed. It's a multi-purpose reed. So people that want to try to cow call, I'm sure you can get some sounds out of that as well. So as far as easy to use, I would put that right around a 4. You do hold it up with your tongue. You increase your air pressure to break that over and get those sounds as you continue to bugle. It seems to hold the grunts a little better. It sounds like we get a little bit of deeper grunt out of this call than we do the Raging Bull. So at this point, I would give this, how easy it is to use, a 4. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the berry game call and look at the 3 criteria for that as well. And again, this is the blue reed. It's called the single blue small bull reed. It does have the narrower frame. The tape is also actually narrower as well because of the frame. The fit right out of the package for me, this call is probably about a 4.5. I mean, it fits me fairly well, so that's great. When we look at the quality of tone, as you've seen and heard for this review here, the quality of tone out of this call, since it was difficult to get really any tone out of this call for me, I'd put that at about a 2.5. How easy is it to use? It kind of goes in correlation with the quality of elk tone it produces. It requires a lot of air and a lot of tongue pressure. It's really a more advanced type of call where you know how to be more consistent and apply those extra pressures. It's a lot more, in other words, a lot more effort to try to blow and get those sounds. So for me, how easy is it to use? I would probably put that at a 2.5 at this point as well. So moving on to the Phelps game calls, we're going to look at the signature bull. Again, this is a wider frame call. I put this right in the same category as the Glacier Country as far as fit right out of the package. Again, it does have a tab on the bottom. I would bend this tab slightly to give it more of a curvature to fit a smaller, narrower palate in between your teeth. As far as quality of tone, I think it has a very good quality of tone. I think that you can get it pretty crisp. It breaks over fairly well with your air pressure, and I'd give that quality of tone about a 4 to 4.5. As far as how easy is it to use, which is our last criteria, I would put that right up and around the 4 range, 4 stars. And the reason that we do that, or I'm doing that, is because it takes a little tongue pressure to hold it in place, and it breaks over with the air pressure. So it really, I'd put this right there as well with the Glacier Country and with the Raging Bull as far as how easy it is to use. Okay, now moving on to our last manufacturer, which is Point Blank calls. Now, this is also, again, the Knockdown Series single reed. It's, again, a wider frame call. It does have a tab on the bottom in the very back in the horseshoe. That, again, is going to go down against your tongue. And I would put that fit right where Glacier Country and the Phelps game calls are. Basically, it's almost identical as far as how the diaphragm fits and the size and everything else. The quality of tone on the Point Blank call, I would put probably right around the 4 as well. It does do a good job. You can get those quality tones. It's not as crisp or as clear as the Raging Bull at this point for a single reed, but it does a good job. I wouldn't be afraid to use it. How easy is it to use? Again, I would put that right up there with the Phelps and Glacier because the reed is so similar as far as the fit and the tone. The ease of use is really this close to being the same as well. So it again, like tongue pressure, you have your air pressure that goes ahead and makes those breaks and those tones come out.